waiting for me tonight. I spent the last week running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive. Let's get lost tonight. Lord, who's on my right?
Hello, wackos. Welcome to Without a Country. I am Corinne Fisher. Hello, I am your host. Welcome to the show. Happy to be here. Happy to be alive. Happy to, well, I was going to say to have Alfred here with us, but Alfred just jumped off the couch. So anyway, he will be here. He has stolen my psychedelic Snuggie and gone upstairs because he's sick of America and this administration. All right, welcome to the show. If you are just joining us, this is a weekly news show where we talk about the most important, biggest news stories of the week, but we also talk about things that might have slipped past your radar, things that were only reported in one news source. We look at stories from the perspective of the right and the left, and we try to find some sense in the middle. Some truth in the middle, and we like to use our critical thinking skills, make sure our sources are verified, and not spread misinformation based on Instagram posts that we see, with some guy making some guy with a WAC spreading, conspiracy theories about the Epstein files does not count as a news source on this show. If you want to support the show, the easiest thing to do is click subscribe right now on YouTube. We would appreciate that so much. We, meaning really me, but also Mike and Crystal and AJ and all the wonderful people who work on this show week in and week out. And tell a friend about it. You can also join the Patreon, patreon.com/withoutacountry, and fiscally support the show for as little as $6 a week. We'll get into more of that later. I am a stand-up comedian. That is my profession, but I'm also a podcaster. That's my other profession. And I also ran for mayor last year in New York City against the one and only Zoran Mamdani. Talk about the worst year to run. But no, you know what? It's the worst year or the best year to run. It was the most exciting year to run, that's for sure. And good to get people talking about the mayor's race. If you have any local elections coming up, we have some interesting city council. We have a city council District 3. Early voting has already started for the Lindsey Boylan race here in New York City, which is, Zoran Mamdani just gave his endorsement a couple of days ago. I don't live in District 3, so I can't be voting in that. And then as far as places I am voting, we have my congressperson is up for re-election, Dan Goldman. But then he has, some stiff competition in Brad Lander, who also ran for mayor against Zoran Mamdani and who ended up endorsing Zoran Mamdani. So that's how many people know Brad Lander. You might also know Brad Lander from the viral video of him fighting, ICE agents downtown. Whatever we want to say about that. I'm not going to get into it anymore, but good for him. People really love him, and I'll be voting for Brad Lander. Dan Goldman is, God knows what he's doing with money. He's heavily funded, definitely a lot of APAC connections, which is the kiss of death these days. And it's so interesting. It's so interesting really to see these once kind of unbeatable politicians, Dan Goldman being one of them. Because when I was looking into running for office, after I made my vow that if Trump was reelected, I'd be running for public office, the first thing I did look into was running for Congress, because that felt like the most logical first step for just kind of who I am in the world, right? And so I first looked into running for Congress, but you can run for Congress in a district that you don't live in, but you should have some kind of a relationship to the district. And so naturally, I looked into my own district first, and Dan Goldman just at that point really felt unbeatable. And that actually is a great testament to how much progress we've made politically in the past couple of years. Because at that, I would say, like, kind of prior to Zoran Mamdani's win, or at least the momentum that he created, and then obviously everyone's starting to really turn on any candidates who take money from AIPAC. Dan Goldman was pretty much unbeatable in his position, unless some kind of a legacy politician tried to step in. But for a political unknown or novice like myself, it would have been unbeatable. And now polling is really looking into Brad Lander having a healthy lead against Dan Goldman, which I think is just so interesting because, again, I know Brad Lander is beloved. I do think he's has good politics, but I also think he ultimately lacks star power, which is why he got annihilated in the mayoral election, which I think he probably in his head thought he had a really, really good chance of winning, as did the establishment politicians. So we'll see. My neighbors, literally, who if I tapped on the wall right now, they could hear me. They just did a fundraiser on Sunday for Brad Lander. That was one I could not attend. I was invited. I didn't give them a reason why, but I feel like I probably shouldn't be attending the fundraiser for someone who physically ran away from me at the No Kings March. I just feel like at that point I'm going to get a restraining order, and no hard feelings. I said I'm voting for him, and that is true. I'm still going to vote for him, but he did physically run away from me at the No Kings March because he knew me from running a mayor. We've done mayoral forums together and everything. And it also just shows to me that he really didn't even take any time to look into who I am, because I guess he thought I was just some kind of weird influencer running for office. And if he or any of his staff members had even taken 2 seconds to look into it, he would know that I am actually, I was doing it completely earnestly, and there was no reason to physically run away from me. And had he not physically run away with me, I would have been happy to help him with his campaign. I don't think he needs my help. I think he's, doing quite well, in this congressional race, unlike, he did in the mayor's race. But it's just really, really funny to me. But again, no hard feelings. I will still be voting for him, not taking it personally. That's the good thing about being a stand-up. You got to take a lot of shit and not take a lot of it personally. I mean, good idea for life anyway, but specifically for life in the public eye. And that's going to be great because we have a lot of stories about politicians and administrations taking things very personally and, indicting folks because of it this week. But let's get into a couple more things. I also wanted to, just to remind everyone about Bill A-101 here in New York. Again, this is a law that exists in different states all over the country, but you'll have to check your local laws and policies to see if it exists where you are. The most recent state to flip this was Texas. So just a reminder that New York is behind Texas in certain sexual assault laws, which is never good. So last Friday, I did start doing more work again for Bill A-101. It had kind of been on break for a little bit. I'm not the head of that charge. I am just someone they call in when they're ready to take action. And, I still don't understand why it's taking so long. This is, Carl Heastie here in New York, Heastie. He's the one who seems to be going out of his way to not pass Bill A-101. As a reminder, this is the voluntary intoxication exclusion, which says that if you willingly consume a drink or, have a puff of a joint the night of your rape, your rapist cannot be prosecuted as a rapist. The press conference that we did last week in front of Governor Hochul's New York City office was just this. It was the most powerful press conference yet, because there were so many survivors of heinous sexual assaults, complex sex trafficking, there was a really incredible woman who spoke, who had been the victim of sex trafficking since she was young, and she has since gone to law school. She recently passed the bar, and now things are getting held up because basically, like, her mom had been complicit in sex trafficking her and opened all these like credit card accounts under her name. And because of that, she was having trouble getting licensed in New York. I think I think she's gotten enough support that it's going to go through, but just a really, really crazy story. And people are going through so much. You just have no idea. Hopefully I'm going to have her on GWF sometime soon. But I've just connected with so many amazing women and some incredible men too. One of the heads of it is this wonderful pastor who I just love so much, and I love that he is a religious man, but he is doing so much work to advocate for sexual assault survivors. And I spoke to him a little bit about that, and I really thanked him for that, because unfortunately so many people are victims of sexual assault because of religion. And he said, yes, that's absolutely part of the reason why I felt like it was my duty as someone who is a pastor and, is a head of, is the head of a church, to take some of the pull that I have and some of the influence I have and really advocate for sexual assault survivors. So that's just great. I'll be at another press conference this Friday at noon in the Bronx in front of Carl Heastie's office. And I just feel like we could use a little bit of press. Again, this is a bipartisan issue. And both, it's really just Carl Heastie that's in the way of it. So like, he has to be hiding something. There has to be either him or a friend who has something going on that this is going to somehow affect them. There's all sorts of sexual assault and women's issues bills that are being held up. The CREEP Act is another piece of legislation. We're going to have some lawyers who are working on that on GWF in the coming weeks. They're already booked, but there's just something going on. And I would really think like a local journalist could do some really, really great work, whether you're, writing for something, whether you work for like New York One, if you're an influencer and you want to do a heavier piece on this, just like hit me up withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Again, this is a statewide issue. It's not just a New York City issue. I have a contact at the Free Press. I know the Free Press is but they do have a reach. And again, because this is a bipartisan issue, kind of doesn't really matter. There's no weird way to really spin this. Like, it just is what it is. And I think someone really needs to do a little bit more digging into this. So that's what I'm working on personally this week. I also have to do some more work on Pageant to the People, but my plate is full as hell. I have so much shit that I'm working on. And there's one other thing that I kind of just really need to put a lot of my energy into right now, so I can actually complete one thing instead of having 15,000 things that I am working on at once. If you want a good documentary recommendation, I think that you should also look at the new Netflix documentary, Trust Me, The False Prophet. I did not finish it yet, but I can already tell it's going to be so good. Just to go over a little bit about it, this is from time.com. Netflix's Trust Me, The False Prophet is structured less as a conventional true crime retelling and more as a primary source reconstruction, built around hundreds of hours of footage, recorded conversations, and firsthand testimony. The 4-part series documents how self-proclaimed religious prophet Samuel Raphael Bateman established control over members of the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in a community called Short Creek, and traces a federal investigation that uncovered how Bateman was running a multi-state child sexual abuse conspiracy. And so this is all about a Mormon community. They live in this really small town where kind of when anyone else comes in, it is considered very odd. And one of the documentary filmmakers is this really interesting woman, Christine Marie. She's like a ventriloquist. She has done work as an escape artist. She was Miss Michigan, but she also was formerly part of the Church of Latter-day Saints. And she she basically like says that she feels a calling to move to this, small town with her husband, Tolga, who is a videographer. And because she got out of this, like cult religious situation when she was young, she becomes a cult researcher. She's like, licensed in cult research. She has a degree in it. I didn't even know that you could get a degree specifically in cult research, but you apparently can. And she feels a calling to go, to help these people. And she goes with such little judgment. And their prophet at the time is in prison, and they kind of are floundering because they don't know what to do with their prophet in prison. He told them, because I'm in prison and I can't have sex, none of you can have sex. He's in sex, of course, for like, having to do with like sex with minor stuff. And so all the people in this community stop having sex. And so they stop procreating, even though in that religion, usually under normal circumstances, and this is for very, very serious, like people who are, doing plural marriages and stuff, not just like chill Mormons. And so they stop having sex, but a lot of them are losing their homes. And so Christine Marie comes in, and she comes in with so much empathy and such a lack of judgment, because she's like, I am there to save them and try to get them out of their religion, because I do believe it to be a cult. But she's like, I'm not going to say anything negative about their prophet, because that's, then how would they trust me? And so many of the women are experiencing financial hardship. She helps them open this like small store where they can sell homemade goods and like baked goods. And there's like women on the screen crying because they were like, they wouldn't have financially gotten through that time in their life if it wasn't for her setting up that small business. And she also sets up a nonprofit to help get donations for things that people in the community need, because they are so looked down upon by other people in the state. And so just no one will help them because everyone else is so judgmental. But having come from this religious background, she knows like the chokehold it has on them. And so she's like, I'm going to help them. And whether or not they get out of this religion, I'm going to make their lives better. And I just really love her attitude. It's a real like without a country attitude, in my point of view, just going. And it made me think about, leftists and MAGA folks, right? Because we've talked so many times, yes, there are people who voted for Donald Trump because they're racist and they hate immigrants and they hate Black people and they hate women, and they're mad that white guys aren't, just surfing by anymore, even though I would, say that you guys kind of are still surfing by a bit. But I think that, if we always keep the door open to people in MAGA, like not saying what you did is okay and you don't need to like apologize, but like you don't need to apologize to like me, you like maybe for like women in general, but like, you need to apologize to people whose families were torn apart by ICE, or people who were gunned down by ICE agents, or people who were deported without, getting to say goodbye to their family members, and their pets were left to starve to death in their home. Like those are the people who need apologies. I just think there's so many people on the left who were largely unaffected by Trump being elected, who are like, no, you owe me an apology. And it's like, you don't really it affected our lives, but like, and I think apologies are owed, but like, yeah, it's not to me. And it's not to many of the leftists I know who are the ones who want apologies. Like, I think that if you're like deported, you don't really want an apology. You want to fucking get back to the life that you had and have fair opportunities, and, not have the Florida state driver's tests now only be something that you can take in English, which is yet another thing that's going on. They're not administering it in Spanish anymore, but there's already like groups in Florida that are organizing to teach people just enough English so that they can pass the driver's test, and obviously like not setting enough time aside that they need to learn the entire English language, which would be such an uphill battle for people who are probably already working, multiple jobs and have lots of other responsibilities that they need to take care of. If they have just moved here. But anyway, it's just, I just really think this documentary series is going to be good. Again, I just kind of dove into it But I think it's going to be quite good, quite eye-opening, and quite applicable to not just this small Mormon community, but to many other things that are going on. And of course, surprise, surprise, this Sam Bateman guy, and this is not even a spoiler because it happens so early in the series. All of a sudden one day he shows up with like a bunch of wives and a bunch of babies, and everyone's like, well, the prophet's been in jail for like 5, 6, 7 years. We haven't, we weren't even supposed to be having sex. Like, how do you have all these little babies? And, surprise, surprise, he has decided that he is actually the new prophet. So yeah, like the real prophet, he actually died in prison. The system is lying to everybody. And he's a new prophet. And he was told like in his sleep by the old prophet, which you would think is crazy, but that's what the prophet before him said to the guy who was in prison because it was his dad. That got a little murky there, but anyway, it's like, well, the original prophet created a lie, and then that lie just got reused and recycled. And again, it is easy to laugh watching the documentary, but as the merch says, not immune from joining a cult, so we don't know what could happen. I just think it's much easier, and especially like with the world of like new age spirituality and tarot and psychics and all this kind of stuff that I go in and out of. I'm like, I always keep one foot out so that I can't be sucked into a cult. But truly, there are so many things that are cult like in this life we live. So we really shouldn't be laughing at other people for things that they overlook that might seem, it's easy for everything to be really clear in a Netflix produced documentary. I'm not going to go, into this anymore. I just wanted to give you a flavor for it because this kind of article is filled with spoilers, I think, and it's better to take the journey on your own. But I do highly recommend watching that. And also, when you're watching it, try to apply the things that go on to other circumstances politically. I think that's always like a fun little game to play. Moving on to Enemy of the State. Oh my God. This week's Enemy of the State is going to be Russell Brand again. I'm sure over the years that we've done this show, he's been Enemy of the State multiple times already, but this guy just can't shut up. Like, I don't understand why he just can't stop talking. Like, the easy solution to like not going to prison, Russell Brand, would just be to stop going on podcasts. Like, please. Like, if honestly, like, he'd be better off starting a cult a la Jared Leto. And I wouldn't be surprised if he either already has and we haven't heard about it, or if he's definitely already considered it. There's not a chance in hell this man has not considered starting a cult, right? This is from Just Jared. Russell Brand admits to sex with 16-year-old at 30 while addressing assault allegations. All right, this is a bit of a Chris D'Elia story here, Chris D'Elia style story. And, add it to your list of things that need to be worked on when it comes to legislation. But we really there's been like 18 stories I've read this week where the problem was the age of consent, right? And so there has to be like a rule that like 16 is the age of consent, but like only for someone up to like, I don't know, 2-3 years older than them. There should be some kind of, and I thought there was, but all these guys are not going to jail. So apparently there is not. Apparently a 16-year-old can consent. Again, I've studied this so many times and I'm like, I really need some clarification from some legal experts, but I'm pretty sure this is all fine from what I've read. And again, there has to be some kind of an age gap law tacked on to this age of consent law in every state because everyone's really abusing it. So Russell Brand is admitting to having sex with his 16-year-old when he was 30, citing the age of consent in the United Kingdom in his explanation. The now 50-year-old comedian and actor made an appearance on the Megyn Kelly show to address the various allegations against him, including accusations of rape and sexual assault. At this point, maybe he should just get back together with Katy Perry with her allegations from Ruby Rose. I don't fucking know what's going on with these people. The plain fact of it is that in Europe and in the United Kingdom, where I'm from, the age of consent is 16. That is a bold sentence to proclaim on a podcast. Can you imagine getting on a podcast and going, "Oh, the plain fact of it is that in Europe and in the United Kingdom, where I'm from, the age of consent is 16." That is my Russell Brand impersonation. I'm going to have to put on that wig or whatever the hell again. My favorite impression that I do is Russell Brand. So I do have to put, I guess that's my weekend plans, as if I didn't have enough to do. I got next Brand. You admitted to fucking a 16-year-old, and now I got to make another video this weekend. And I did sleep with a 16-year-old when I was 30, but when I was 30, I was a very different person. I was a lot younger, and I was an immature 30-year-old, he explained. I like that he explained how time worked in that sentence. That was fun. Like, listen, I'll give up to even like 25, maybe even 26. I'll give you a little room to say I was still young. But by the time you're 30, this excuse ain't working anymore. When you're 30, you know that you're not supposed to be fucking a 16-year-old. Everyone who's 30 knows that, unless you have some kind of a disability or or like not even a Benjamin Button disease, because that's just visual. And so unless you are disabled, you mentally, you know that you're not supposed to be fucking a 16-year-old when you're 30. And furthermore, why would you want to? 16-year-olds look like children. That's gross. When there is a strong power differential, as there is when you're a famous man that has the ability to attract women that I did at this time, girls, I think involves exploitation. I think it's exploitative. I recognize that my sexual conduct in the past was selfish, and I did not apply enough consideration, barely any, I suppose, really, to how that sex was affecting other people, he continued. Again, just so much funnier if you read it in his voice, right? I think that as exploitative. I recognize that my sexual conduct in the past was selfish, and I did not apply enough consideration, barely any, I suppose, really, to how that sex was affecting other people. I didn't really practice that, but in my head, that's how he sounds. What fame gave me and what my addiction fueled was opportunity for endless consent, which led me to be a hedonist and a fool and an exploiter of women. And that is wrong. And that is something that needs to be redeemed and addressed and atoned for. And how is that going to be? By a podcast that you're personally monetizing? What I'm obviously not only querying, but violently or aggressively or assertively opposing is he likes to use a lot of big words and just jumble them together so that you get confused, is the idea that this is a judicial criminal matter where consent was overridden. Actually, what happened is consent was directed. That's what being famous and being, if I may say, forgive me, charismatic affords you. No, you're not charismatic, dude. You're cringe. Okay. And I hate the word cringe. So if you've pushed me to use the word cringe, you're oozing cringe. Forgive me, charismatic affords you is the ability to direct consent. That doesn't mean it's right. It's actually not right. It's wrong. It's a sin. It's an expression of selfishness and false idolatry, he went on. Oh my God. Stick a fork in it, Russell Brand. Just shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck. I'm going to get a group of influencers together to make a PSA asking Russell Brand to please shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up. Oh my God. We're not the final say on what's right and wrong. God is the final say. And then just all these people, I can't. If I was like a big God person, I would be so angry at people like Russell Brand who live truly despicable lives and then say that the only person that can judge me is God. Like really, you know what? You got me hoping more than anyone now that God does exist. And that God is fucking pissed at you. Well, you might not meet him though, I guess. Like if you get sent to hell, do you do some kind of like an intake with God and then he like pulls a lever and you go to hell? Or do you just not even get to meet God and then you immediately go to hell? What would be worse? Like, what would be worse? And I'm also using my lip slut fuck ice lip gloss here. Money does go towards it too. Fuck ice. It goes to like immigration services, basically, like helping people who have been fucked over by ICE. But yeah, like I do wonder, if you are religious and listening, what's the story here? What are people telling you in your faith? If you are going to hell, do you just go to hell and you never get to meet God, or do you get to meet God and he gets to tell you that you fucked up and then you go to hell? I feel like it probably would be worse to meet God and have him tell you that you suck and then go to hell than just going to hell, probably. He currently faces, Russell Brand, he currently faces accusations made by 6 women between 1999 and 2009. And we didn't need those, honestly. Like, I feel like in some sexual assault cases, you should only have to submit the jewelry and shirt worn by the predator, by the accused. And then a judge of your peers can make a decision based on what you were wearing. I do think that the question, what were you wearing, is valid, but only for the predator, not for the victim. So just that's my stance. I do think that by looking at a collection of Russell Brand's large costume stone jewelry, his rings, his weird polyester flowy shirts, his linen pants, that we can clearly understand that this man is a predator and should be behind bars. Russell Brand is also currently promoting his upcoming book, How to Become a Christian in 7 Days, described as a testimony and guide to a timeless, yet zeitgeist capturing, grounded, yet psychedelic encounter with Christ. All right. Well, I'm going to have to buy that or steal that from someplace. I can't steal it from a place because that will negatively affect the business, when all we want to do is negatively affect Russell Brand. So I guess I will buy it. I will buy that because I got to read that. I got to share some of that with you guys, and I don't need you guys to be having to look through that, but I'll add that to there's so many books that I need to tear through. I also still need to read Cory Booker's book, Stand. This whole world is a joke. What are we even doing? All right. Moving on to Patreon really quickly. I just want to shout out our amazing dictator, Christopher Fungi. Thank you so much for your service. You are the only true prophet, Christopher Fungi. Hello to my capitalist pigs, and hello to my cuties. And let's welcome our newest cutie to the gang, Monica V. Thank you so much for becoming a Patreon subscriber and supporting our show. I appreciate it so much. I hope you enjoy your time here. If anyone else wants to become a Patreon subscriber, just head over to patreon.com/withoutacountry. And you can become a subscriber for as little as $6 a month. And with the subscription, you get a free, exclusive, well, not free, but an additional video news story every single week. And that lives on the Patreon. And it's just an additional story that we don't cover on the show. And it's going to be a great time had by all. And then we also have a first in our Patreon history. And that is, I had a band member for the first time. You know what? I knew it was too good to be true because you guys are so amazing and so positive. And I love the emails that you send me, withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. And this week I did, I had previously got a message from this person that just said, hey, want to chat? And I was like, all right, well, this doesn't necessarily mean anything sexual. Like, I didn't respond because I'm not like, yeah, like when you join Patreon, it doesn't mean that we DM all day, like boundaries. But, obviously, like sometimes people DM me with a serious question or a suggestion. And those, of course, I will answer to the best of my ability. Sorry if I've ever missed anyone's. If I miss it, feel free to shoot me the question again. Because as long as it's not problematic, I will, and I have the capacity to answer it, I will. If I don't answer a lot of times, it's because you crossed a boundary in some way. Like you asked me something too personal, and I'm not going to like reprimand you, but I'm just not going to answer it. Right. But then I see another question from this person, or really a statement rather, and it said, I'd love to see you in a nice pair of shorts. And that's when this person got banned. But because I never want anything hung over my head, I also refunded the entire month to this person. So you can't call me on anything. You've been refunded and you've been banned from the group. And obviously, there's still a possibility you could be watching on YouTube right now. If you are watching, fine, that's fine to watch. But if you ever contact me in a sexual nature again, I'm giving you, this is your warning. If you ever say anything to me that is not news related again, ever in your entire life, I am putting all your contact information out publicly. Do not test me. This is your one warning, and you're an adult, so you shouldn't have to even be warned once. But I'm in a fucking good mood. Isn't that crazy? This is me in a good mood. This is not OnlyFans. I understand that some creators have Patreons that are, of a sexual nature. You know that mine is not, and that is very clear that it is not. And how fucking dare you? How dare you? You're so lucky that I'm in a good mood, and I'm not telling everyone and their mother to contact you via email. And if I had extra free time, I would call my ex-boyfriend, who's a hacker, and we would find out where you work, and we would call them. Okay, enough. All right, moving on. And that wasn't a threat. That was a promise, just so you know, legally. Let's move on to the wacko mailbag. We just have one. We got a lot of emails this week, but again, I have a pretty clear vision of how the show is going this week. And the email that stood out from the wacko mailbag this week was from a writer named Clean Lion, sorry. And this is a Cuties Corner about sloths. And I love sloths. And this is something that I looked into a lot when I was in Costa Rica, because there are a lot of tourist attractions where sloths are removed from their natural habitat and brought to some kind of a tourist attraction and then monetized. And you have to be really careful. I mean, this is for like many animals. They do have to like capybaras and, sloths and so many other elephants. Obviously it's done too. But I am not against all animal tourism. In fact, got you guys into love. I know I love animal tourism, but you have to be very, very careful around it. There are so few like animal experiences that tourists can enjoy that are considered like kind of okay. I mean, some people basically are like, unless you are in the wild and just stumble across a tiger, any type of animal tourism is not okay. That is not my like the way I think. But really, please, when you are on vacation and doing an animal experience, really please research it a lot. Even when I was in Japan, there were like a lot of like those cafes and stuff that I really wanted to go, like a capybara cafe. But all of them, when I looked into the reviews and looked into like more animal welfare, articles and pieces about it, these animals for the most part are usually just, not in a good situation. Ideally, the only type of like animal tourism that is okay, and this includes zoos, is like when the animal for some reason needed to be rehabilitated or was born in captivity for a certain reason, and it would be unsafe for them to be released back in the wild. And that certainly does happen. And that's kind of the only time that animal tourism is usually okay. But, look at each animal tourist attraction one by one before you decide for yourself whether or not it meets the criteria, for animal welfare. And so this is from worldanimalprotection.org. Clean Lion, I know you sent me an article from another thing, but it was from Apple News, and it just like I couldn't open it, so I just found this different article. It says, but it's the same story. Dozens of wild sloths die at Florida tourist attraction Sloth World. And so when I saw sloths in Costa Rica, I literally just went through the actual rainforest with a local guide and a pair of binoculars, and he would just point when he saw sloths in trees. That's how I experienced sloths. I didn't go to any type of captivity walk along thing with a animated sloth or anything. And yeah, I'm sure I would have seen more sloths or seen sloths closer, or been able to touch a sloth had I done one of those things, but it's not worth it. These creatures deserve to live a wonderful life. We've already disrupted them so much by, even existing. So we're lucky to be able to see them at all. More than 30 wild sloths died after being captured in South America and transported to Florida for a new tourist attraction called Sloth World. Florida's really not up to good stuff this week. According to state inspection and necropsy record. It's like, obviously I can know the root of it, like necrophilia, but necropsy, I don't know how you would pronounce that. State records show that at least 31 sloths died under the care of Sloth World between late 2024 and early 2025. That's a lot of sloths to die in a year, or less than a year possibly. The animals were imported from Guyana and Peru and held at a warehouse near Orlando's International Drive as the company prepared to open a conservation branded visitor attraction. And notice that it says conservation branded. They can say that they're conserving. You got to dig a little deeper than that, though, right? It's like when a restaurant says, best coffee in the world. Dig a little deeper. You can kind of write anything you want to. Inspection and wait, let me look how to pronounce that. This word is not coming out of my mouth right. Necropsy. Okay. Let's see. Inspection and necropsy records obtained by Inside Climate News and published by Daily Kos show the facility was unsuitable for arboreal rainforest species, cold confinement, and extreme stress. According to Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission incident reports, the warehouse lacked reliable electricity and running water when the sloths arrived. Oh, that's good. Space heaters repeatedly failed, leaving the temperature too cold for animals evolved to live high in tropical forest canopies. Investigators documented instances where sloths were left overnight in the cold without heat. Many showed signs of emaciation, infection, and systemic stress. Necropsy reports later identified infectious disease and severe physiological strain as contributing factors to the deaths. 10 sloths imported from Peru in early 2025 fared no better. 2 arrived dead, and the remaining 8 were so weakened that none survived, according to state records. This tragedy reflects a broader pattern linked to the commercial exploitation of wild animals, condemning wildlife trade. Sloths are particularly vulnerable to capture, transport, and confinement. Yeah, because they can't run away. Solitary and highly specialized, they struggle to survive even short periods outside their natural environment. Wild animals are taken from their natural environments purely for tourism attractions, and their captive homes often offer a limited quality of life to what they need to survive. We are calling for an end to wildlife attractions that profit from close contact encounters at the expense of animal welfare. Attractions like this don't prioritize the well-being of animals kept and can pose a danger to them and the people that visit. Despite the scale of the deaths, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission records indicate that the agency did not use citations or penalties, concluding there was no intentional wrongdoing. Well, I would say setting up the whole thing was an intentional wrongdoing, but who the fuck am I? Inspectors did, however, document cages that failed to meet minimum legal requirements and issued a verbal warning to the facility in 2025. I'm sure that really did something. Conservation scientists argue that the lack of enforcement highlights gaps in wildlife protection laws and raises concerns about how exotic animals imports and captive facilities are monitored in the United States. What we can do as a collective. Public pressure is now critical to prevent further deaths and to stop similar attractions from opening. World Animal Protection US is urging the city of Orlando to shut down Sloth World and to block its operation as a tourist venue. And I beg of you, even though, oh my God, sloths are so cute and I totally understand why you would want to go, please know that do not support a venue like this. And please tell your friends and family if you live in the area not to support a venue like this. It is not okay for animals. You'll have an opportunity to see a sloth in your lifetime. And it's just not worth it. I assume that if you're going to Sloth World, it's because you love animals and you want the best for them and you do like them. And so I would just really hope that if you truly love them, if you could sacrifice, petting a sloth for 2 minutes for their overall welfare and tell your friends and family the same. This next sentence aligns with what I just said, but we are also calling on tourists to boycott attractions that offer wild animal encounters, as behind-the-scenes suffering is often hidden from public view. Research who you book with and make sure you choose travel companies that have robust and authentic animal welfare policies in place. There are many who have taken the wildlife friendly pledge, which is a great place to start. And, this is one thing where I actually don't think only rich people can access wildlife in a way that is not disturbing to them. I think there are plenty of like local places. You just have to get a little bit creative. Most like in most experiences, like you can actually usually like just find like a local person wherever it is that you are who knows a lot about the environment and ask a lot of questions, and that person will know something that is authentic. Obviously, there are also local people who will just want to make a buck off of tourists, but like, you can read people. Even with a language barrier, I think you can kind of tell who's a good person and who's a bad person. That's just like an innate feeling. That's human. Avoid anywhere that promotes close interactions with wild animals. Seeing animals hand off living safely in their natural habitats is the most ideal, as it won't harm the animals and can benefit local communities. Exactly. So what I did with the sloths, it's like the sloth didn't even know I was there, but I got the joy of seeing a sloth. And it was great. And we were all happy. Thank you so much, Clean Line, for sending that in. Again, if you want to send something into the show, it's withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. All right. Sorry. I got to drink a lot to do this show, and there's not really anything I can do during the time when I'm drinking. There should be maybe like a drinking song that I have when I enjoy my Gatorade. This is thank you, Justin. The home setup took a lot of time and love and money, but I appreciate it. So David, the singer, which is my light just flickered in a weird way. The D4VD. He was finally 7 months after Celeste Rivas's body was found in the fucking front truck of a Tesla. He has finally been charged with her murder. As a reminder, so he's like he's the 21-year-old alt pop indie rock R&B singer whose legal name is David Anthony Burke. He went viral on TikTok in 2022 with the hit Romantic Homicide. Interesting to have committed homicide, as many people point out, and then have a song called Romantic Homicide. And so this is a little kind of refresher of all the stuff that went down. And the sources for this are a compilation of TMZ, CBS, CNN, NBC, Al Jazeera, BET, I think a little Wikipedia in there. So the charges, David has been charged. And this is one of our main stories for today because I'm just absolutely fascinated by this story. It's crazy the amount of time it took to find Celeste Rivas's body, to charge David. Like, there's just so much foul play in this. David has been charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances, lewd and lascivious acts with an individual under 14, and mutilating a body. LA County DA Nathan Hochman said the special circumstances include lying in wait, financial gain, and murdering a witness, making Burke eligible for life without parole or the death penalty. Prosecutors allege that when Celeste threatened to expose his criminal conduct, so Celeste is this girl, I think they were hanging out since she was like 13 years old. Again, he's, 2021 at the time. And they were having like, she was like on his live streams all the time. So like, it is very like, it is well documented that this was like a fan who was around. He basically at one point, I think, had taken her, had convinced her to like stop living with her parents and come and live with him and then all of a sudden she disappeared. And, these different sources are alleging that she threatened to expose criminal things that he was doing that would ultimately devastate his musical career. I'm guessing, there was some kind of, something was going wrong in their relationship. I'm going to put relationship in quotes since she's a fucking minor. And then she was like, you know what, like, if you keep treating me in this way, or if you keep fucking other girls or whatever it is that you're doing, I'm going to come out and accuse you of all this criminal stuff that you're doing behind the scenes. And, obviously he then allegedly murdered her. Burke, I'm just gonna call him David because there's too many names going on here. So then David invited her to his Hollywood Hills home, killed her with a sharp instrument, cut up her body, and stuffed her remains into 2 bags placed in the front trunk of his car. And he has a Tesla, so I guess there's a front trunk in a Tesla. I've ridden in a Tesla. I've never seen the front trunk though. But if if there's anything I know about Elon Musk, and if he's building a car, there's going to be space for a body in it, eh? Celeste Abigail Rivas Hernandez was a 14-year-old girl from Lake Elsinore, California, born to parents who immigrated from El Salvador. She was reported missing 3 times the final year of her life. She last ran away in April 2024 and last contacted her family in May 2024. Her family described her as a beautiful, strong girl who loved to sing and dance. Every Friday night was movie night. And the timeline of red flags in their relationship is as follows. I love a little chronological order here. In the summer of 2024, David posted on Discord that he was in a song crisis. Within minutes, an anonymous user replied, "Drop the one with the missing girl, Celeste Rivas Hernandez." The message went unaddressed by Burke. Her face was on missing persons flyers at the time, which is like just crazy. And if you even go to his Instagram between the time that he supposedly committed the murder and then like when he's getting charged with it, like just looking at someone posting, just like mirror selfies and shit, it's really, really haunting. In January 2024, Celeste, then 13, appeared side by side with David in a Twitch live stream from inside a West Hollywood home linked to him. The two joked and bantered until around 3 a.m. before David laughingly said, "Delete everything." Between January and March 2024, David was photographed getting out of a black Tesla just blocks from Celeste's home in Lake Elsinore, over an hour's drive from where he lived. A local teen posted the photos to TikTok. Around the time of her first disappearance, someone sent an email to an address bearing David's name on his record label's domain, saying that, quote, "There's been talk he may have had something to do with her disappearance," and urging him to do the right thing and take her home. Celeste returned home within days of that email. After her body was identified in September 2025, a private investigator hired by the owner of David's rented Hollywood Hills property found a digital camera inside the house containing photos of both Celeste and David taken in late December 2024 and early January 2025, months after her family had last heard from her, which is crazy. In the age of cameras, like to have a digital camera, especially when you have murdered someone, allegedly, that like you would leave behind, as opposed, I guess he thought that was safer than a phone that's like linked more specifically to you and to your internet and to your credit card, but that's still fucking wild. Like, make sure you keep an eye on that camera. People are so sloppy with their murders. Prosecutors believe she was at Burke's Hollywood Hills home on April 23rd, 2025 at his invitation and was never heard from again. Never heard from again. Well, that would be a good title for a podcast about women who go missing at the hands of their lovers, assaulters, killers. The Tesla had been parked on a street near his home since late July 2025, around the time Burke began his national tour. It was ticketed, towed, and on September 8th, 2025, a worker at the Hollywood impound lot called police after noticing a foul odor. Her severely decomposed and dismembered remains were found inside the front trunk. That is really that's some straight man energy to be like, you know what, I'm going to go on tour and leave a decomposing body in the trunk of my Tesla that has been ticketed multiple times. Okay. All right. That's crazy. The romantic homicide internet lore angle. We talked about this like 7 months ago when this story first dropped, but a resurfaced interview showed David explaining that his songs are based on a manga he created about a detective with a murderous alter ego named Itami, which means pain in Japanese. Oh God, a sad boy turned murderer. This is exactly what we need. This is crazy. Oh my God. He described a music video in which Itami holds a bloody knife and faces a bloody female character described as the ghost of the first person he killed. After Celeste's body was found, fans noted the resemblance of the woman in the video to Celeste and the fact that the video's release coincided with her birthday. Oh, he's like Taylor Swift dropping Easter eggs here, huh? There was also a leaked love song reportedly named after Celeste Discord chats where David called out her name. Oh my God. And live streams he reportedly tried to delete. So calling out someone that you murdered's name during a Discord, I feel like if I'm his lawyer, I'm trying to plead insanity. They didn't do that, but I feel like that's the only thing that's going to get you out of this. And you might be insane. I don't know. What happened to his career when the body was found? As a reminder, David canceled the remainder of his Withered world tour, both in the U.S. and abroad, and was dropped by Crocs and Hollister just days after. That's so funny. This is horrific. A girl was murdered, but also it's really funny to have Hollister and Crocs being the brands that were paying for the murderer's tour. It kind of just doesn't feel like the correct branding for a murderer, feels pretty tame. Just days after being announced as the face of their Dream Drop collaboration. All promotion of his music was pulled by UMG and Interscope. His defense. His attorney, Blair Burke, who has represented, you're going to love this list, guys, who has represented Harvey Weinstein, Kanye West, and Britney Spears. That's case closed, entered a not guilty plea and said they had received almost no discovery in the case. The family also released a statement saying they support and stand by him 100%. All right. The through line here that's especially chilling for you guys is that the allegations describe a predatory relationship that began when Celeste was 13, lasted over a year through repeated disappearances, and a fan community that was openly whispering about it online. And that's where gossip is good, right? This is an instance where gossip is good and gossip is helpful. So if you guys love celebrity gossip, use it for good, right? I actually think there have been some updates, speaking of celebrity gossip. Sorry, I'm just getting a pillow for my back because I'm 40. If you guys, wanted celebrity gossip, just use it for good, because in the Alex Cooper case, it seems more and more that a lot of the problems at Alex Cooper's network Unwell are really stem from her husband, who I forgot the guy's name, but he's another one of these guys who is tall, and apparently Alex Cooper didn't check his face. I understand, I'm sure he has a lot of money. No amount of money, no amount of inches in height is gonna entice me to fuck that buck-toothed beaver that she married. Look, zoom in on that guy's face. Mike, pull up a picture of Alex Cooper's husband's face, because this is not a fuckable face. Alex Cooper, as much animosity as I hold in my heart towards her, Team Alex Earl forever, she is a hot, successful, capable woman. Okay? This is a good looking woman. Look at him. That's this Neil Brennan. That's tall Neil Brennan. Stop it. Is that not Neil Brennan? That's Neil Brennan taller and without glasses.
I would say arguably more rat-like facial features than even Neil Brennan.
And Neil Brennan's an artistic genius. This guy's not. Holy shit. Wow. Alex Cooper, imagine, Alex Cooper made $185 million off of podcasting. And this is who she chose to marry, because you don't need money when you have $185 million. That's when you just go out and you find a guy with a big cock who's hot and going to be real nice to you. And he doesn't need to even have a job. What are we doing here? It is crazy that someone who hosts a relationship podcast, it's kind of not a relationship podcast anymore. It's kind of just an interview podcast, but who has hosted a relationship podcast in the past, that's the guy that she ended up with. So anyway, it was recently talked about that he has been, he has a big footprint on Unwell, which is her podcasting network, and he's really unpleasant to work with, and he's screaming at people, and he screamed at Alex in public and in front of staff. And it honestly just got me feeling bad for Alex, because even a beautiful woman worth $185+ million who is one of the biggest podcasters in the world can be in an emotionally abusive relationship. And that really sucks. And I feel like that was, with Soup Man and the whole kind of start of the breakdown of the Call Her Daddy duo with Sophia and Alex. Initially, it was a man who started that feud. It was HBO Soup Man, wasn't it? If I'm remembering that feud correctly. So this is really these women get so much power. And I think maybe they question their own ability to run a company, or, a man sniffs an opportunity and comes in and tries to be some kind of a mentor and ends up just fucking the whole thing. We know Alex Cooper is capable. She knew what she was doing when in those early vlogs, and she was, editing the show herself. She is quite capable. She didn't need this fucking bucktooth guy. This sucks. But anyway, so all this to say, please use your celebrity gossip for good. Not for evil. And I think there's many opportunities, Russell Brand, there's many opportunities to use celebrity gossip for good, not for evil, not to talk about how much weight, Kelly Osbourne, lost after her fucking dad died. New York Times even released an article on David. Let's dig into that and see if there's any more information. There was a lot of things that were kind of dropped last minute in the past couple of days, but I'm glad New York Times did a full article on this, because I do think this is important and not enough people are talking about it. David charged with murder of a girl whose remains were found in his car. The singer is accused of sexually abusing Celeste Rivas Hernandez before killing the teenager with a sharp weapon and mutilating her body. He has pleaded not guilty. The singer, known as David, was charged on Monday with the murder of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a missing teenage girl whose severely decomposed body was found in the trunk of his Tesla last fall. Let me see. Because, all right, so we already know all this. Yeah, Mr. David, with 21, was also charged with the continuous sexual abuse of a child under the age of 14 and with the unlawful mutilation of human remains. The singer, who has millions of followers on social media and music platforms, created the anthem for Fortnite. I guess that's where he also picked up children playing Fortnite. In 2024, he was an opening act on SZA's SOS tour, and last year he released his major label debut, Withered. Lawyers for David have said they will vigorously defend David's innocence. The actual evidence in this case will show that David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and he was not the cause of her death. Okay, that's what the lawyers are saying. I'm on the edge of my seat to see what was the cause of her death. She was dismembered and in the trunk of his car. How are you going to get out of that? How are you going to get out of that? Oh my God. Wow. According to the district attorney's statement, after David sexually abused Celeste, she threatened to expose his criminal conduct and devastate his musical career. So Mr. Burke allegedly murdered her, cut up her body, and stuffed her body in 2 bags that were placed in the front trunk of her car. The case has captivated the public since the authorities announced in September that they had discovered human remains in a Tesla registered to David. Officials, said the car had left out for weeks. In the felony complaint filed on Monday, prosecutors said David had engaged in 3 or more acts of substantial sexual conduct between September 7th, 2023 and September 7th, 2024. Again, at the time she was 14 years old. The mutilation, her body was found the day after what would have been her 15th birthday. Because Celeste's body was dismembered and badly decomposed when it was discovered, Chief McDonald said the county medical examiner's efforts to determine a cause of death were delayed and significant evidence in the case had degraded or disappeared. In November, a judge granted a request from the Los Angeles Police Department to place a security hold on a report from the medical examiner. In the news conference on Monday, Mr. Hochman said the report, which is expected to detail the medical examiner's determination of the cause of death, would be released soon. Repeated efforts to reach members of Celeste's family have been unsuccessful, but Patrick Steinfeld, a lawyer for the family, said in a statement that family members were committed to ensuring that Celeste's voice is heard. Oh my God. All right. So not much new information in there, but I also read, and I don't know where this is coming from in my head, because I read a bunch of different articles, but I read also, it was not only the dismemberment, but apparently at one point they could tell that some of the body parts had been placed in a freezer and then taken out and were thawing in the front trunk of David's Tesla. And I don't know, I've never planned a murder, but apparently if you are planning a murder, I think it makes it more difficult to determine cause of death. I guess if you freeze them, which seems counterintuitive to what I would think, because I would think that would preserve, but it's basically the combination of things that were done to the body: the mutilation, the freezing, the thawing, the decomposition, the temperature changes, the dismemberment. Made it much more difficult to figure out the primary cause of death. But this is extremely gruesome. And then furthermore, I just came across a clip before I went on air from a creator who found video footage of David talking, and so it's him reacting to it here, but this is David in an interview, and this is so damning.
She died in the back of my mind. I didn't kill her physically, but in the back of my mind, she died.
And you wonder why he ended up getting arrested. David just sounds like a psychopath talking about his own lyrics.
And I didn't even cry, not a single tear. I've seen people online take different meanings and interpretations from that one part of the song where it's their past selves that's dying. And they're not even crying about it because they're evolved, they've become better people, or have killed addictions and other different stuff like that.
He definitely did kill an addiction that he had on a 14-year-old. Hopefully justice is served for Celeste Rivas.
So that's crazy. Listen to this first sentence.
She died in the back of my mind. I didn't kill her physically.
He goes, she died in the back of my mind, and then no one's asking any follow-up questions, and he goes, I didn't kill her physically. What? Are you out of your fucking mind? What? It's just an artist talking about a song. He's like, yeah, she died in the back of my mind. I didn't kill her physically. Yeah, but what? That is fucking crazy. If I'm the prosecution, I'm literally going up, playing that clip, and then saying, all right, make a decision. All right, I rest my case. That is so fucking wild. That is so fucking wild. All right, so that's one of our main stories. Again, just justice for Celeste Rivas. It's just so. I just keep thinking about how scary her final moments were, because that's my thing when I think about murder. I'm just always I hope they just went quick and there wasn't a lot of suffering. And this just seems absolutely fucking brutal. And I'm still against the death penalty. I don't want capital punishment for David, no matter how bad of a person I think he is. But I do think he should be in prison for the rest of his life. All right. Moving on to the next thing. This is something that was pretty much under the radar until literally very close before we went on air today. New York Times finally released a story about it. But the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a pretty big nonprofit, they do a lot of good work, was apparently trying to raise funds to infiltrate hate groups. In this instance, primarily the KKK, and the DOJ. Trump's DOJ has just indicted them, saying that this is a misuse of funds for a nonprofit. And of course, the minute I read this, I was like, there has to be some reason that they're targeting the Southern Poverty Law Center, because why else would we then indict someone who arguably is trying to do a really good thing? And it seems like they were basically like paying people who used to be members of these hate groups to infiltrate them from the inside, which is a very common thing to do when you're trying to infiltrate a group, because obviously like they're not going to let just a random outsider in, and seems like a perfectly suitable use of funds. Obviously they had to kind of hide some things about the funds, but they were doing that so that the infiltration would work, not because they were like, committing tax evasion or something. And so I was digging a little bit into this. The first time I read about this story was what's today? What was today? At on the NPR website. It was like just a very, very short article, interview style from Morning Edition that said DOJ indicts Southern Poverty Law Center on federal fraud charges. And I'm like, this is interesting. I also saw another headline that had something to do with KKK. And I'm like, why are we going out of our way to try and take down a group that was trying to shut down, and infiltrate the KKK? This seems like, arguably a pretty good thing that we can all agree on is a good thing. So it says the Justice Department indicted the Southern Poverty Law Center Tuesday, alleging the civil rights group defrauded donors by using their money to pay informants to infiltrate extremist groups. Which, if I don't think I've personally donated to the Southern Poverty Law Center, but my family definitely has. And this to me seems like a great use of our money. And so, again, I don't usually like to read interviews, but this one's really short. And this was the start of how I started, looking into this. So Michelle Martin, host, says, for decades, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been known for tracking hate groups. On Tuesday, the Justice Department announced federal criminal charges against the nonprofit in connection with its use of paid informants to infiltrate extremist groups. NPR Justice correspondent Ryan Lucas is covering this, and he's with us now in our studios. Good morning. Ryan Lucas says, good morning. Martin says, before we get to the charges, would you just quickly remind us of what the Southern Poverty Law Center does? Lucas says, so the Southern Poverty Law Center, it's also known as the SPLC. It's a 55-year-old civil rights organization. It has a storied history. It's based in Montgomery, Alabama. It started out as a law center doing a lot of civil rights work, trying to help end the vestiges of the Jim Crow era in the South. And its work later expanded to monitoring white supremacist groups, hate groups, including the KKK, and extremist groups more broadly. Martin then says, what is this administration saying they did that they say is illegal? Lucas says, well, look, there are 11 counts in this indictment against the SPLC, including wire fraud, false statements to a bank, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. And what the indictment alleges is that the SPLC defrauded its donors by telling them that the group was working to dismantle extremist groups, but was in fact using donated money, the DOJ says, to fund extremist groups. Court papers say that between 2014 and 2023, the SPLC paid around $3 million in total to informants affiliated with several hate groups. That includes the KKK. It says the SPLC set up bank accounts in the names of fictitious entities to pay these informants, the idea being to hide that the money was coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center. But the indictment says that in setting up these accounts, the SPLC was making false statements to banks. Right. And so it's like, their argument is that like, because they had to pay informants inside the KKK to infiltrate the KKK, that they were funding the KKK. So wonky logic here, but let's see. Then Martin says, how does the SPLC responded to this? Lucas says, well, the group put out a video statement before the charges were announced, saying that the SPLC was under federal investigation. And in that video, the nonprofit CEO, Brian Fair, defended the payments made to informants. He says these people risk their lives to infiltrate extremist groups and provide information on their activities. And like, yeah, no one's doing like, I mean, I guess there are some people who are doing it for free, but it's like people who have some kind of like a moral awakening who would do it for free. But if you can't find enough people with a moral awakening, the next best person is someone who needs some cash fast, right? It was done to protect SPLC staff, to gather intelligence on violent threats. It's like these people have never seen a movie. He said that information was shared with local and federal law enforcement, including the FBI. And he said the information no doubt saved lives. He also said the SPLC will defend its work. And this is a soundbite of there was a soundbite of archived recording. Brian Fair says, who's the CEO of the nonprofit Southern Poverty Law Center, we will not be intimidated into silence or contrition, and we will not abandon our mission or the communities we serve. Lucas says, now, Fair also argued in that video that SPLC is being targeted for political reasons, and I agree with that. Martin says, well, sentence doesn't make sense. We have seen the Justice Department under this administration go after President Trump's critics, often at his explicit direction. So what about Fair's argument that this indictment is political? Lucas says, well, look, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche delivered this news at a press conference yesterday, and you can watch that online if you want. I think PBS has a recording on YouTube. He was asked about concerns about politics in this investigation. Here's what he said. And then there's an archive recording of Todd Blanche saying, well, I mean, look, it's free from, there is nothing political about this indictment or this investigation. Oh, well, that sums it up, Todd Blanche. Good one. Lucas says, now, it is no secret, though, that conservatives have been highly critical of the Southern Poverty Law Center for years. Of course, they're fighting white supremacy. This is the Trump administration's nightmare. They say it unfairly labels conservative organizations. One example they point to is an SPLC report in 2024 that described Turning Point USA. That's the group, of course, that was started by right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. Described it as a case study of the hard right. I think that's accurate as fuck. And then after Kirk was assassinated last year, the FBI ended a long-running relationship that it had with the Southern Poverty Law Center. And at the time, FBI Director Kash Patel said that the civil rights group had turned into what he called a partisan smear machine. Now, this prosecution, this case, of course, is just getting underway. So we will see how this all plays out in court. And that's the end of that small interview. But then a little while later, a couple hours later, the New York Times released a lengthier story about it. And I want to go into this again, just because this was a story that was not getting a lot of traction this week. And I albeit this kind of news only came out on Monday, but it's already Wednesday now. And I do think this was really one of the most interesting stories that we came across this week. This is from just a couple. Well, let me see. I thought it came out today. This is marked as coming out yesterday, but I could only find it like within the past couple hours. I don't know. Let's see. But it's marked April 21st, just so you guys know. But it says Justice Department charges prominent civil rights group with financial crimes. Republicans have accused the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is best known for investigating hate groups, of unfairly targeting conservative and Christian organizations. So the justice, and this is by Devlin Barrett at the New York Times. The Justice Department charged the Southern Poverty Law Center, a civil rights group that has long tracked hate groups, on Tuesday with financial crimes, accusing it of defrauding donors by using their money to secretly pay informants inside extremist organizations. At a news conference announcing the charges, Todd Blanche, acting attorney general, said that the same thing about the $3 million, the Ku Klux Klan, all this kind of stuff, lying to donors. The indictment, however, offers little to support the notion that the group's payments to informants was meant to aid the extremist groups that they had infiltrated. Yeah, because that's not what it was for. So it's going to be hard to prove something that wasn't happening. Prosecutors describe how one informant, which the law center refers to as a field source, was a member of the online leadership chat group that planned the 2017 Unite the Right event in Charlottesville, Virginia, and attended the event at the direction of the SPLC. And again, when we talk about people having a moral awakening, this plus money is a perfect recipe for this. So 2017 was almost 10 years ago at this point. Plenty of people have changed how they act in the world politically since then, how they show up in the world politically. Many people have had a political change of heart. So this is not crazy, that someone who, was one of the planners of Unite the Right has now been like, oh my God, I did a lot of bad. Maybe I can try to use my knowledge and my relationships and my connections with these people to make things right again. That is like very common. There's a lot of influencers on Instagram too who have had that same trajectory where they used to be a neo-Nazi, or they used to have, be, some kind of a white supremacist, or they used to be in an extreme religion that, hurt different groups of people. And now, to make amends for that, they have gone hard in the other direction. I also personally have a theory that anyone who can get into an extremist group, and even when they are out of that extremist group, still has kind of like extreme tendencies. So once they have the, moral awakening, they kind of go hard on the other side. Like, you'll notice that pattern. Any of these people who, are still really public after leaving a cult or leaving an extremist group often come off as still extreme. Like, even like Rose McGowan is a pop culture example of this. She was born into the Children of God cult. And so she had a very extreme beginning. And I think that's why people react so strongly to her, to this day, because she's seen such horrors and she's seen these truths that a lot of us haven't seen. And she advocates loudly for them. And I think because of that, she comes off as quote unquote crazy, when it's really just that I'm sure she is frustrated because she's been through so much. She's seen so much truth, and she's like begging for us to listen to her. And everyone's like, we're busy right now. Back to the article. That rally included torch-wielding marchers chanting anti-Semitic slogans and violent clashes that culminated with one participant ramming his car into a group of counter-protesters, killing a woman and leaving at least 19 others injured. And I know anti-Semitic doesn't mean anything to anyone anymore, but at the time, we talked about this a lot. White supremacist groups, many people think that they hate Black people the most, and they hate Black people. That's for sure. They fucking hate Black people. But guess who they also really hate? Sometimes more Jewish people, because they do, believe that Jewish people run the world and are all evil. And, that's a sentiment now shared by many people who aren't white supremacists. So times they are changing. The informant made racist postings under the supervision of the SPLC and helped coordinate transportation to the event for several attendees. The charging document said between 2015 and 2023, the informant received more than $270,000 from the group, the indictment said. Another informant affiliated with a neo-Nazi group was paid more than $1 million over a period of about 9 years, according to the indictment. And in 2014, that informant stole 25 boxes of documents from an unidentified violent extremist group. The Southern Poverty Law Center later used those documents to create a report about the group. Yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds like a great, again, like, this is actually, when I donate money to a nonprofit, exactly what I want the money going towards. I feel like most times when I donate money to a nonprofit, the money goes towards stamps and envelopes to send me letters asking me for more money, when it could be going to me paying a former neo-Nazi to infiltrate a white supremacist group. And that sounds like a fucking great idea. And, if you're doing dangerous work like this, dividing $1 million over 9 years is only 1,100, 11, 1,000, 1,000, why is this not coming out? 111,000. I'm sorry. That was like a glitch in my brain. It was just 18,000 ones. It was, that much money over, a little over $100,000 a year for doing like really dangerous work that could get you killed. And he got 25 boxes of internal documents stolen from a white supremacist group. Like, that's amazing. I think that's a great use of money. The center faces charges of wire fraud, false statements to a bank, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. No individuals were charged in the indictment, though. Mr. Blanche said the investigation was continuing. He accused the group of manufacturing racism to justify its existence. If that isn't a telling sentence, manufacturing racism to justify its existence. Wow. Mm-hmm. I don't think we have to manufacture racism in this country. I think it's alive and well. It's on its own. Then it gives a backstory again of the Southern Poverty Law Center. The criminal charges come as the Trump administration makes a broader push to counter what it calls anti-Christian and anti-conservative bias in government. Last week, the Justice Department issued a report highly critical of how the Biden administration prosecuted anti-abortion activists under a law meant to safeguard access to abortion providers and church services. Brian Fair, the group's interim chief executive, expressed outrage over what he called false allegations. The indictment, he said, will not shake our resolve to fight. And the civil rights movement becomes a reality for all. Talks about the video again that he issued. The center had for many years provided information and tips to local law enforcement and FBI. Conservative criticism of the Southern Poverty Law Center intensified again after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. In October, Kash Patel said that the FBI was severing ties with the group and again called it that political smear machine. Let's see. Just trying to go through. Again, this is a lot of the stuff that we already went through, and they just made this article much longer for no reason. And then we'll get into Kash Patel filing the lawsuit against the Atlantic in just a minute. All right, then the rest of it is about Kash Patel. But anyway, so that's all the information we have on that right now. But then I went back a little bit more because I was trying to figure out in my head. I was like, obviously, this is concocted. This whole indictment, it's pretty clear. I think the clearest piece of evidence is that there is no evidence that it was in any way providing money to support the KKK's vision as an organization. And yes, they were giving money to members of the KKK to infiltrate it from the inside. Again, this is clear. We're not reinventing the wheel right now. And so my first kind of thought was maybe a lot of these white supremacist organizations are working in conjunction with the Trump administration because, I definitely think that is a broader part of Project 2025, and the Trump administration, especially term 2 at large, is, a big part of this is this white supremacy, I would say undertones, but they feel like overtones at this point. And so, maybe they didn't want anyone kind of looking into that further, especially not, this leftist civil rights group. But then I also found a New York Times article. And this is the one from today. And so this is the second one that came out today. And this is about how the Southern Poverty Law Center drew the ire of conservatives initially. And so this is by Richard Fawcett, and hopefully this fills in the gaps a little bit more. For much of the 21st century, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been at the center of a bitter partisan war in America over what constitutes hate. The Law Center, which is based in Alabama, began in 1971, earning a reputation for battling the Ku Klux Klan in court and helping reporters and law enforcement keep tabs on far-right domestic extremists. More recently, however, the SPLC has earned the ire of conservatives by criticizing a number of organizations, including Moms for Liberty, the Family Research Council, and Turning Point USA, the many on the right considered to be squarely within the American mainstream. The conflict entered a new phase this week when the Justice Department charged the SPLC with a number of financial crimes. We know them all now. To somehow have been criticized by the SPLC, it was a moment to savor a potential comeuppance for what they perceived to be a powerful, politically correct bully that has sought to shame and silence legitimate voices. Well, obviously I experienced a certain Schadenfreude because this couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of creeps, said Mark Krikorian, executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies, a group that supports immigration restrictions and has been on the SPLC's influential list of hate groups for years. And what a crazy thing to call it when you're anti-immigrant. Center for Immigration Studies. Okay, fuck you. The SPLC defines a hate group as an organization that has beliefs or practices that attack or malign an entire class of people, typically for their immutable characteristics, according to its website. The indictment appears to fit within the Trump administration's pattern that we've been tracking for a long time on this show of using the Justice Department to punish its political adversaries. The SPLC has certainly been adversarial toward the president. In an article last year, Margaret Huang, who was then the president and chief executive of the group, wrote that with President Trump's second election, hard-right extremism now had an ally in the highest office in the nation. And this is at the point in the article where I start laughing at myself because I'm like, oh, here I am, really trying to think, complexly about what the DOJ could have against the Southern Poverty Law Center. And, is it that the administration is working closely with white supremacist groups to carry out this larger plans? And really, I should have looked at something so much simpler, is that someone from the SPLC once said something negative about Donald Trump himself personally, and he's been losing sleep over it ever since, because that's always the fucking answer. And I don't even know why I really tried to look into it any deeper than that. But let's go on. Whether the federal charges will stick is unclear. The second Trump administration has, and I just want to stop right here and say, as a petty bitch, there, obviously, it's disgusting that he does this with our tax money and with people in his administration who could be taking time to do good work. But there is this other petty bitch part of me that's kind of just what, I appreciate that you're so petty that you became president not once but twice, and have used your position in power mostly to stick it to your enemies. There is a part of that I have to respect. Whether the federal charges will stick is unclear. The second Trump administration has failed to build winning cases against other political opponents, including Attorney General Letitia James of New York and James Comey, the former FBI director. Listen, I don't know. I got to look into that. There was still parts of that Tish James things that to me felt weird, where she, bought a house with her dad and said it was her husband or whatever. But in the SPLC, the administration has picked a formidable and deep-pocketed foe. Over decades, the group has been buffeted by scandal and scathing critiques from both the left and the right, yet has managed to thrive with its promise to be a beacon of hope fighting white supremacy. The Law Center was founded by Morris Dees and Joe Levin, white Alabama lawyers intent on ensuring that the gains of the civil rights movement in the Deep South stuck. With Julian Bond, the African-American activist, as its first president, the SPLC took to the courts, filing suit after suit attacking the remnants of the segregation system, reforming juvenile justice, and addressing matters of concern to immigrant workers, women, gay and lesbian people, and others. And this was a time before social media, so sometimes people just did things because they actually believed in a cause and equality and then didn't just need views. The work engendered significant goodwill among like-minded Southerners. Catherine Coleman Flowers, an African-American environmental activist from the Black Belt, recalled in an interview that the SPLC bankrupted a group called the United Klans of America with a lawsuit after two members lynched a black man named Michael Donald in 1981. A lot of the work and let's just take a moment for how fucking recent that is. That is so a black man named Michael Donald lynched in 1981. Fucking hell, man. A lot of the work they were doing early on was work around ensuring that marginalized communities were not terrorized, Ms. Coleman Flowers said. Rumblings of discontent came later. In 1994, the Montgomery Advertiser ran a series of articles in which Black employees of the SPLC raised concerns about racial discrimination inside the organization. We knew it was going to happen. Mr. Dees denied the accusations, but the Law Center remained influential. In 2001, its multi-million-dollar headquarters, a daring contemporary building in the sleepy heart of Montgomery, was completed. Okay, that's a little weird to have multi-million-dollar headquarters, but okay. Many national news outlets regularly turned to the group's Year in Hate reports, relying on them to give a portrait of homegrown extremism around the country. Even so, left-wing critics soon began accusing the group of hoarding millions of dollars and paying its leaders big salaries while soliciting donations from wealthy coastal liberals and exaggerating the grassroots threat. In a column for The Nation in 2009, Alex Cockburn, the provocative leftist writer, called Mr. Dees, who had become the face of the organization, the arch salesman of hate mongering. Ever since 1971, U.S. Postal Service mailbags have bulged with his fundraising letters, scaring dollars out of the pockets of trembling liberals, aghast at his lurid depictions of a hate-sodden America in dire need of legal confrontation by the SPLC, wrote Mr. Cockburn, who died in 2012. The rise of the so-called alt-right and a deadly rally organized by white nationalists in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 showed that racist extremism remained a tangible threat. But old concerns within the SPLC came to the fore again in 2019 when Mr. Dees was fired. And just guess where this is going. Why do we think he was fired? Why do we think he was fired? That's right, sexual stuff. When Mr. Dees was fired and a number of top executives quit amid allegations of sexual misconduct and racial discrimination within the organization. Mr. Dees denied wrongdoing, but acknowledged that a female employee had filed a complaint against him in 2017, stating that his actions had made her feel uncomfortable. I mean, men's existence makes me feel uncomfortable sometimes. Can I file a report against that? Conservatives took notice. For years, they had bristled as the SPLC put groups that opposed LGBTQ rights and immigration on its hate list. The Center for Immigration Studies earned a spot, the SPLC argued, as a result of its repeated circulation of white nationalist and anti-Semitic writers in its weekly newsletter, and the commissioning of a policy analyst who had previously been pushed out of the Conservative Heritage Foundation for his embrace of racist pseudoscience. In 2019, the Center for Immigration Studies sued Richard Cohen, then the president of the SPLC, in federal court, saying that the organization had violated civil racketeering statutes in trying to destroy CIS by ruining it financially. The lawsuit was rejected by the courts. That same year, Senator Tom Cotton wrote the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, asking the agency to consider revoking the law center's nonprofit status. Recent news reports have confirmed the long-established fact that the SPLC regularly engages in defamation of its political opponents, Mr. Cotton wrote. In fact, the SPLC's defining characteristic is to fundraise off of defamation. The effort, well, fundraising off of bad stuff is like pretty common. Yes, it's wrong. And obviously these hate groups don't, are saying they don't want hate to happen. But if you're paying attention to any political campaign, anytime something negative happens, they monetize off of it. Zoran Mamdani's campaign is a great example of this. Do you remember when someone called his office and called him, I forgot what it is, and I'm not going to repeat it, but it was some kind of a Muslim slur, right? Think of the ones it's one of those. And they simply, his team just recorded a video of the phone and the phone playing that message. And I believe overnight, didn't that raise his campaign $100,000? So, well, yes, I'm sure that it's tiring to hear negative things about a religion that means a lot to you, and to be called defamatory things when you are just trying to pursue an office to, make things better for New York City. Ultimately, do I think that they're glad that message happened? Yeah, because they raised $100,000, right? And if someone called my office and called me well, you know what? I didn't have it. My office is, you're looking at it, was my couch. But I was thinking things. I got a ton of rape and death threats in my mayoral inbox, but I didn't. I decided not to post them because I didn't want to make the campaign about that. So I was going to make a point saying that I hoped someone called my office and called me a dirty cum bucket or something, but it didn't. I don't wish that, actually. So never mind. But this is. I don't think it is I do believe that a Southern Poverty Law Center, it probably does definitely fundraise off of fear and defamation in and of itself. I also don't think that is something that is unique to the Southern Poverty Law Center. And I don't think that I don't like it. I don't think it's the right spin. I love the truth. But I think these groups also are salivating to make as much money as possible. And so sometimes that blinds them, you know, raising money blinds people, and whether it's money to put in their own pockets or money to put towards their cause, like it becomes this kind of fucking addiction. I'm not excusing them, but again, I don't think this is like specifically unique to the Southern Poverty Law Center. The effort was unsuccessful, but the pressure from Republicans has only ramped up since Mr. Trump's return to the White House in October. Kash Patel, the FBI director, announced that the Bureau would no longer cooperate with the SPLC, calling it a partisan smear machine. We already said that, but it's so fun to say again and again. That same month, Elon Musk posted on social media that the group was guilty of incitement to murder Charlie Kirk, the co-founder of Turning Point USA, who had been killed a month earlier. Mr. Musk cited another post that noted that Mr. Kirk had recently been featured in the SPLC's Hate Watch newsletter. In December, a subcommittee of the Republican-controlled House held a hearing on the group. What is moving on here? A hearing on the group. The chair, Representative Chip Roy, from Success, like it sounds like a Succession name, a Texas Republican, opened it by calling the SPLC one of the most politically motivated, financially lucrative, and ideologically extreme nonprofits in America. And let me just check something real quick. This makes me want to go, and I should have done this before, but this makes me want to go to charitynavigator.org, because you can see where the money is going on charitynavigator.org. I always recommend, before you donate to a nonprofit, checking it on charitynavigator.org. Now, according to charitynavigator.org, and listen, I can't, obviously someone could be paying off charitynavigator.org, but it has a 98% 4-star charity rating on charitynavigator.org, which, and they're measured on a lot of things, their impact, their leadership, their compensation practices, their workplace policies, the financial health of the nonprofit, certainly how much people at the top are getting. No loans. I mean, that's a really good rating. I wonder, so I don't think would Turning Point be on here? No, because it's a political organization. Yeah, no, the smaller sex, Turning Point USA, because it's like the local. So here, Turning Point USA Inc. So in comparison, is this the Turning Point though? This is Turning Point USA Inc. Can't tell if this is the Turning Point because this is out of Phoenix. Mike, do you know if Turning Point is out of Phoenix? Like the Charlie Kirk Turning Point?
Well, I know that's where they had his memorial, so I am assuming that would be
okay.
It's heavily associated with that's also where they were bragging about doing like 500,000 in merch sales in a weekend at his funeral too. So
right, okay, so yeah, so then because if it is this is out of Phoenix, so then this is then the turning point. Thank you. I think it would be like in comparison, Turning Point USA on Charity Navigator is only rated 80% and a 3-star charity. And I know you could then say, well, is Charity Navigator owned by libs? Charity Navigator, is it biased? Like it's like a reporting site, so I don't know how it can be biased. Yeah, and on the media bias fact check, it's rated least biased. The expense of yeah, because I just again, it's going off of like financial reports, so it's not like there's not like news articles on it. Some people say it's like overly simplistic rating system, but again, I don't know. I think it's like pretty, because it's basically saying like, are the leads of this nonprofit getting paid like a crazy amount of money? Like, what if you is Black Lives Matter on here? Because we know obviously all the shit that went down with them. Yeah, so like Black Lives Matter Foundation Inc., like the main one has a 78%. So that's more on par with like a lower rating. Again, that's kind of high
So-
even for that, but
You're
Yep.
telling me that Black Lives Matter, which has been indicted multiple times for like, all kinds of misappropriation of funds, is only 2% less trustworthy than the like biggest grassroots conservative movement of my lifetime?
with what they're doing with their money. So I don't care how it's not about the level of impact. Like Turning Point and Black Lives Matter were both extremely impactful, but they were both fucking around with money. Therefore, how they're getting that rating. So they can have they can have both have really high impact ratings, but really low ratings for how they're divvying up funds. That's how I would think that you would get at that.
I'm just saying I've seen like way too many stories about the misappropriation of funds for that specific charity, and then nothing about like, TPUS. Granted, we don't hear about mega church pastors buying millions of homes either. So
Well, exactly. I think that's a little bit more because, well, I think your answer to that is that liberals love to tell on each other, and conservatives keep each other's secrets a little bit better. So I think that's maybe what's going on there. If everyone at Turning Point is stealing, they're just keeping quiet about it, whereas people at Black Lives Matter are telling on each other. So that might be the problem there. But I think this actually does align. And the fact that Southern Poverty Law Center is getting like a almost perfect rating in comparison to these ones. I just kind of wanted to look that up in the middle. All right. Let's see. So Chip Roy, he's saying, the SPLC is one of the most politically motivated, financially lucrative, and ideologically extreme nonprofits in America, and argued that it has been allowed to wield extraordinary influence over federal civil rights policy, federal law enforcement training, and the private sector mechanisms that increasingly dictate who is permitted to participate in civic life. Interesting assessment, but I think that's more common for any of these big organizations than you would think. And it's a problem that I have with all these kind of like politically influential nonprofits. Like, you think, oh, nonprofit is positive. When you walk into these political rooms, especially like the municipal political rooms that I walked into, all those nonprofit people are there too, and they're all lobbying for their cause, and they're just and it's just a big old fucking mess. But the Trump era appears to have been good for the group's fundraising. The SPLC's latest federal tax documents on file with the government show that it had total assets of more than $822 million at the end of 2024, more than double its total assets in 2016, the year of Mr. Trump's first election. So, their claim here is that the Trump administration, they fear-mongered around the Trump administration, I'm guessing, to make a lot of money. And yeah, I'm sure they did. Yeah, I'm sure they did. A lot of people on the left fear-mongered to monetize the Trump administration. Yeah, that's yeah. In the news conference this week, but like, is it fear-mongering when then we see in by term 2 what is really going on in the Trump administration, or was it just being like, fucking let's warn people, But the Trump era appears to have been good for the group's fundraising. Yeah, again, yeah. The SPLC's latest federal tax documents on file with the government. Sorry, I'm just reading the same thing again. I just got so into it. In his news conference this week, Mr. Blanche said that from 2014 to 2023, the group made payments totaling more than $3 million to the people associated with the Ku Klux Klan and the National Socialist Party of America. Interesting, but there was little in the indictment that showed that the group had meant to help the extremist groups. And then we go into the video message again. And then he says again about the informant saves lives. And that today, Mark Morial, president and chief executive of the National Urban League, argued that the indictment was about intimidation, not accountability. It is about silencing organizations that have spent decades confronting hate, protecting vulnerable communities, and advancing justice under the law, he said. A number of liberal commentators also noted this week that the use of informants was a common practice in the 1960s and 1970s. The strategy was perhaps most famously used by the FBI to infiltrate civil rights groups and other activist groups. Using it you don't have to explain to us using an informant. It's a great idea. And I'm really interested to see where this goes. Again, I think this was the most interesting article of the week. But we'll keep our eyes and ears peeled on that story. All right. This is an exclusive now from the Washington Post. Obviously, I want to do an update on Iran on the Strait of Hormuz. This is by, who is this by? Dan Lamoth, Noah Robertson, and Ellen Nakashima. And this is a Washington Post exclusive. Clearing the Strait of Hormuz of mines could take 6 months, Pentagon tells Congress. They're, and they're like Iran is seizing ships now. It's just a big old mess. It's a big old mess. The Pentagon assessment shared in a classified briefing for lawmakers suggests gasoline and oil prices could remain elevated through the midterm elections. And that is not good for the Republicans. It could take 6 months to fully clear the Strait of Hormuz of mines deployed by the Iranian military. And any such operation is unlikely to be carried out until the U.S. war with Iran ends. The Pentagon has informed Congress an assessment that means the conflict's economic impact could extend late into this year or beyond. Great. A senior Defense Department official shared the estimate during a classified briefing Tuesday for members of the House Armed Services Committee, said 3 officials familiar with the discussion. The timeline met with frustration by Democrats and Republicans alike. 2 of these people said, is the latest sign that gasoline and oil prices could remain elevated long after any peace deal is reached. Beyond any economic ramifications, such an outcome could have significant implications politically in the United States, particularly for Republicans, as November's midterm elections draw near. President Donald Trump's decision to start the war has proved unpopular with most Americans, recent polls have shown, and it has fractured his political base. Even Tucker Carlson, if you saw recently, just made a big thing of saying, that he regrets having endorsed Donald Trump and that he has to take accountability for having done that. And, I think this is pretty clear, but then Molly Jung Fast, who's just like a interesting, journalist and daughter of the famous Erica Jong, the writer, she did a kind of an Instagram video. I think this was only yesterday, and where she was just like, yeah, Tucker Carlson sees an opportunity here to possibly run for maybe some kind of a political office. And so now he sees that Donald Trump is 79 years old, that this is, yet another step where he's lost part of his fan base. But there is going to be someone, when he's done with this term, who the torch needs to be passed to. And why not set yourself up in a position where you're like, I could be this, whatever MAGA turns into, the people who depart Trumpism, most likely aren't going to go to the Democratic choice. So that leaves a space to kind of be the new, if the theme of today's show is prophet, to be the new false prophet. For the people who are leaving the MAGAverse. All right, and it has fractured his political base, which voted him into office based in part on his repeated promises to avoid foreign military entanglements and focus more on domestic issues. On Wednesday, the average cost of a gallon of gas in the United States was $4.02, according to AAA, up from $2.98 just before the war began in February. Good golly. Trump has vacillated on the question of when gas prices may come down, saying this month that they could be the same or maybe a little bit higher. And that's what we call answering the same question, answering one question with 2 of the only 2 possible answers by the midterms before declaring that they would be much lower before the election. His Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, has said it could be late September before we can have $3 gas again. 3 officials speaking on the condition of anonymity because of the discussion's sensitivity said lawmakers were told that Iran may have emplaced 20 or more mines in and around the Strait of Hormuz, a vital waterway for the movement of Middle Eastern oil through the Persian Gulf. Some were floated remotely using GPS technology, which has made it difficult for U.S. forces to detect the mines as they are deployed. The senior defense official told lawmakers others are believed to have been laid by Iranian forces using small boats. The Pentagon declined to address questions about the military's assessment for how long it could take to clear the mines. A spokesman, Sean Parnell, issued a brief statement acknowledging that the disclosure was made in a classified briefing for lawmakers and calling the information inaccurate. By deciding to publish these false claims, the Washington Post has made clear that they care more about advancing an agenda than truth, the statement says. U.S. Central Command, which oversees operations in the region, declined to comment. The White House referred questions to the Pentagon. The stifling of shipping traffic in the Strait of Hormuz has emerged as an enduring flashpoint in the war, with Iran declaring it closed and even attacking some ships as a way of inflicting pain on the global economy, and the Trump administration as Washington and Tehran each pressed their demands to end the war. Before the war, about 20% of the world's oil moved through the strait, with Japan, South Korea, China, and other Asian nations among those heavily reliant on Middle Eastern energy. Trump has insisted that Iran end its nuclear program, turn over all of its highly enriched uranium, and fully reopen the strait, threatening further military action if Tehran does not agree. Iran has said it will not continue negotiating with U.S. officials unless Trump ends a naval blockade he imposed this month to choke Iran's oil-based economy. Iran began laying mines in the strait in March as U.S. and Israeli forces continued their attacks on the country, a detail reported earlier by CNN. Trump, in turn, threatened that Iran would face consequences at a level never before seen unless it removed any mines that may have been placed. The Pentagon, in subsequent days, highlighted an effort to attack Iranian vessels that could emplace mines. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, speaking on social media, said U.S. forces were destroying those ships with ruthless precision and that the United States will not allow terrorists to hold the Strait of Hormuz hostage. Iran's deputy foreign minister, Majid Takht Ravanchi, responded by denying that Iran was laying any mines. The New York Times, citing U.S. officials, reported this month that it appears Iran is unable to find all of the mines it laid. Great. That's really good. That's the thing with I guess when there's it's water mine, land, like what kind of, they're not referring to them as landmines. Are they landmines in the water? How are we laying these? Landmines are so scary. Mines in Strait of Hormuz.
Aren't they like, I'm picturing like World War II era where it's like a big ball that has like little spikes on it, and then if you touch one of the spikes, it explodes.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Because they're specifically weren't saying landmines, but I know like they have the same effect as landmines. But if they can't find them, they're submerged, I guess then, and you'd have to find them by some kind of like underground system. Yeah, but they are the spiky balls is when I did mines in Strait of Hormuz info. So then you just like forget where you put them. That's fucking terrifying. My God. The Pentagon's latest assessment was shared with lawmakers after Trump said on social media that Iran, with the help of the USA, has removed or is removing all sea mines from the Strait of Hormuz. That assertion, made Friday amid a flurry of messages posted by the president on his Truth Social platform, coincided with his apparent efforts to calm markets and project confidence that a deal to end the war was near. Trump on Tuesday said that he was extending a 2-week ceasefire indefinitely. Iran's leadership, he said, is seriously fractured and needs to come up with a unified proposal. His comments came amid indications that Iranian officials were reluctant to meet for another round of negotiations. CNN reported in March that an assessment by the Defense Intelligence Agency found that Iran could keep the strait closed anywhere from 1 to 6 months, with mines relevant as one factor. Parnell, the Pentagon spokesman, told the network then that a 6-month closure of the Strait of Hormuz is an impossibility and completely unacceptable to Hegseth. It is unclear what plan the U.S. military would implement to go about a mine-clearing operation. Officials have raised the possibility of using helicopters, drones, and explosive ordnance disposal divers. Some commercial vessels moved through the Strait of Hormuz this month during the ceasefire, but shipping traffic again stalled this past weekend after Iranian forces opened fire on tanker ships and declared the waterway closed again. Richard Nephew, an expert on Iranian diplomacy and senior researcher at Columbia University, said the 6-month time frame to clear the Strait of Mines is likely to jolt oil and gas market, given the concern insurers, ship owners, and captains will have about moving through a mined sea lane. You're not going to have many people wanting to run that risk, he said. The presence of mines might not cause a total interruption, nephew said, but the consequences of a 2-track straight being partially unusable could be significant. Very interesting. We learned what sea mines look like. That's great. And we gotta wrap up. But so quickly, just to kind of summarize the Trump administration problems of the week, we have Kash Patel suing The Atlantic for making him look like an irresponsible alcoholic. A lot of people, and it's a $250 million defamation suit. Everyone kind of thinks it's a long shot. And a lot of people are kind of being like, what's going to happen here is that it's just going to make them look into your behavior even more. And your behavior has been really bad. So this is almost like, you're pointing a finger and you got 4 fingers pointing back at you being like, you're an irresponsible alcoholic that shouldn't have the job. And this is probably going to end up getting you fired, as all of Trump administrations get fired. So that's one thing going on in the Trump administration. Second thing going on in Trump, in Trump land is that yet another Trump administration female it has biting the dust. And this is going on in the same Department of Homeland Security counterterrorism office that was already in chaos previously when it was run by a 22-year-old campaign worker who had zero national security experience, just to refresh your memory on that. And what was happening here is this is a top official, and this information is from the Daily Beast. She's a 29-year-old who is now under investigation because she had a profile on Seeking.com and basically was like getting money from being a sugar baby, right? And so I was kind of like, I could see how people would, there's a huge stigma against anyone who is engaging in any type of like sex work thing. But I was like, honestly, I don't really see like a huge problem with this. This is basically just someone who needed a second source of income. I didn't think it was like that crazy. But then I kind of looked into it more. And the problem here is not the morality, but that it is an issue for national security. That's kind of the argument that's going on here. That it's a threat to national security because she could end up being blackmailed by her sugar daddy. And I looked into this a little bit more. Let me just go to my phone right here where I have more information stored. And let's see. This is about David. So yeah. So what? A man identified only as Robert B. Filed a complaint, and this is like her supposed sugar daddy, right? So he filed a complaint with the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General, claiming that he spent between $30,000 and $40,000 on this Trump high-level staffer, Julia Varvero, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism at DHS. And over a period of 3 months, he spent that amount of money, and he covered trips taking her to Aruba, Italy, San Diego, South Carolina, bought her jewelry, designer handbags. And then he discovered that she had a profile on the sugar daddy site. So he was like a sugar daddy, but he didn't know he was a sugar daddy, basically, is how I'm reading this. And her profile on Seeking.com was under a fake name, Alessia, and claimed she told him sugar daddies had paid for her college education. And this pissed him off because he was like, I thought this was like a real relationship, not a sugar daddy relationship. And Varvaro's response said that they were in an exclusive relationship and calling the complaint the work of a mad ex-boyfriend putting crap together. That's her official response. And I guess I don't know if we have an age on Robert. Do we have an age on Robert B? He is wealthy. He is an executive. And national security experts say, and again, this is from the Daily Beast, that in a senior counterterrorism role, accepting large sums of money from men opens you up to blackmail and shows compromised judgment that puts national security at risk. The alleged abuse of position is the bigger legal exposure. During their first trip together to Aruba, Varvaro allegedly used her DHS position to have a TSA supervisor meet them at the United check-in counter and whisk them through security at Dulles Airport. She also allegedly suggested her counterterrorism role could get them VIP Olympic access. I love a 29-year-old in counterterrorism acting like counterterrorism DHS is fucking Coachella. Hilarious if it wasn't a threat to national security. But that's what's going on there. So she's kind of on hold right now. She's on leave. And then this one we knew was coming, but also the Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemir has resigned, and that this is from notice.org. Her tenure has been plagued by yes.
Oh, sorry. I got some color from of course the New York Post on that lady. They said that he introduced her to his daughter, and she said, "Dad, what are you doing? This is just another Long Island gold digger."
Oh my God. What I can't believe I missed that quote. That's fucking hilarious. That is so funny. Very valid contribution. Thank you, Mike. And so the Secretary of Labor, her tenure has been plagued by multiple scandals, an investigation into allegations that the secretary was engaged in an extramarital affair with a member of her security team, and accusations of inappropriate behavior like drinking on the job, hopefully with Kash Patel. So that's just what's going on in the Trump administration. Just a lot happening there. We also in Florida, again, state of the week as you usually are. We had a Florida Democrat resign from Congress, literally 5 minutes before a panel was supposed to decide whether or not they wanted to expel her. Sheila Sherfulis McCormick stands accused of stealing $5 million in federal funds. And, again, just decided to step down. And the $5 million that she's charged with embezzling was federal disaster aid. And she apparently used it for her campaign instead of for federal disaster aid. And so she announced her resignation from Congress yesterday, minutes before the House Ethics Committee was going to vote on whether or not to expel her, which I feel like this happens a lot in Congress where people are stepping down before they're investigated or before they're expelled. And I feel like, again, we have to introduce some type of legislation from stopping that from happening, because it's such a bitch's way out. The Democrat, I know a big in voting this week, the big thing was the Virginia redistricting. The Democrats did win that. And Fox News is saying Virginia Democrats got their number last night, but what they got was not a mandate. It was a margin, a razor thin 3-point squeaker that cost them $64 million in dark money to pull off in a state where the governor won by 15 points just 1 year ago. If this is what victory looks like for Democrats, Republicans should be encouraged. It goes on and on and on. But, Democrats still did win. And obviously, conservatives not taking it super well. Trump, and then lastly, I did want to talk about the Shreveport massacre. Nothing really to talk about except for just another horrific instance in which a bunch of children died when you could have just killed yourself. My friend and I have a running inside joke, which is it's a dark humor, but it's a kind of a nonprofit we want to start for men called Just Kill Yourself. When they are angry and they end up killing their wives and their whole family, and we don't really understand why you can't just kill yourself. Just kill yourself. Why does everyone else have to be involved with your issues? And the last thing is, the effects of Joe Rogan on our society. Joe Rogan's continued influence on the American people. So number one, he fucking endorsed Spencer Pratt this week. So again, I warned you guys last week about, if you're in Los Angeles, that I think there is a real chance Spencer Pratt could become your mayor. Now, New York Post did an op-ed this week that says by Kirsten Fleming, He changed reality television. Now we need him to fix Los Angeles. You're writing for the New York Post. What are you even concerned about Los Angeles for? Like, what are you even talking about right now? And so he was a guest on Joe Rogan's podcast, and you know, he did endorse him, even though he lives in Texas, in the mayoral race. And again, just please heed my warning. I know it kind of all started as a joke, silly Spencer Pratt from Hills, Laguna Beach, whatever, running for mayor. I think this is a real possibility. And just as much as people didn't pay attention to Zoran Mamdani, even though that was a positive for New York for him winning, I mean, not for me personally, but no, for all of New York. It was certainly, it showed that politics is a changing right now. And let's not be complacent and think that that only means it's changing in a leftward direction, right? So we can't act like we're safe just because Zoran Mamdani is mayor of New York City. That is, you know, even though his campaign ended up being really big and kind of having this snowball effect, it's still only one fucking city, right? Best city on earth, sure, but only one city still. So please, Los Angelinos, keep your eyes on that race and get out there and do some campaigning and canvassing for someone who you think would be a fit mayor. I really can't tell you how dangerous I think it is that Spencer Pratt will become mayor of Los Angeles. And then on a rather positive note for both Joe Rogan and Donald Trump, I gotta say, is his new executive order on psychedelic drugs, right? Overall, I think psychedelic drugs have a huge stigma attached to them, and I think that they could be doing a lot of good. Certainly, I think they're a lot better than many pharmaceutical things that are like suppressing feelings and emotions and shit that you have. I'm not like anti-SSRI, but I also think that SSRIs don't work for anyone, don't work for everyone. And certainly if there's other things that you want to explore, or if you have, treatment resistant depression, that is treatment resistant to SSRIs. I love that things like Spravato, which is, the ketamine that is approved for insurance companies to cover, things like that are now being introduced. But that's kind of it. And I think we're a little behind when it comes to psychedelic usage. But it is worth noting that on April 18th, Donald Trump signed an executive order intended to accelerate the development of psychedelic drugs as medical treatments. The order calls for the FDA to give expedited consideration to psychedelics that meet certain criteria. It also calls for the Department of Health and Human Services to direct $50 million to match investments made by state governments into researching psychedelics as treatment for mental health conditions. And this all started from Joe Rogan simply sending the president a text message, and he said he responded like within moments. So, it said, what does this mean for psychedelics as treatments? It has not always been easy to perform research on the medical uses of psychedelics, nor has pinning down a practical evidence-based therapy using psychedelics. 2 years ago, the FDA rejected an application to approve MDMA as a treatment for PTSD, asking for further study. Late last year, the FDA decided against granting accelerated consideration to Compass Pathways synthetic psilocybin treatment for severe depression. And the thing that pisses me off a lot about this is a lot of these treatments are not covered by insurance, but they are still provided, especially in major cities like New York. So once again, it's this thing where people with money are able to just pay their way into better mental health care or treatment for their PTSD or whatever it is through psychedelics. And I really think that, obviously your mental health care shouldn't be pay to play. And I'm just, I want this to be, it's going to suck because then pharmaceutical companies are just going to monetize psychedelics and like kind of fuck them up. And, and I also have, of course, theories that they don't want our minds to be open. So, of course, they don't want us to have psychedelics. But good on Joe Rogan in this sense, and good on Donald Trump for being receptive to it. Again, I do have a rule that when Donald Trump does something good, I do want to give him credit for it. I think that's important. So I do think this was a good positive move. And we can see where it goes, but watch out for that fucking Spencer Pratt, because that was not a good move. All right. I think that's kind of everything that I wanted to go over for today. Busy day as usual. Thank you so much for joining me on Without a Country. If you want to send me an email, it's withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Please make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube page. Please follow me on social media at Philanthropy Gal. And I started an Instagram account for just comedy videos because my algorithm is a little fucked still from running for mayor and posting all that political content. So I'm trying to resuscitate and get back into the comedy algorithm. It's working, but I also just have a space now that is straight only stand-up will be posted there. Corinne Fisher Comedy. I just started. There's like no one following it yet, but now you know about it. So that is that. And Mike, where can people see you this week?
Well, you can see me at all times at the M Harrington on Twitter, Instagram, or any of those platforms. But the big place to catch me is at $3 Bill, the largest gay bar in all of New York City, I'm told. We're back for the Femme Tournament 2.0, non-binary ninja defending their title. Going to be a really good time. Tickets available at thearmoredleague.com.
I love $3 Bill. Very cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Without a Country. We appreciate you. If you want to hop on the Patreon, it's patreon.com/withoutacountry. And remember, the truth is in there. And if you check out that cult documentary on Netflix and have any thoughts to it, or if you or yourself were in a cult, let me know. withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Peace. Bye.
Running from the man, yeah, the madman's coming, yeah, the man's gunning for me tonight. I spent the last week running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive.